Welcome to this tutorial on using blend modes to stylize video or images. So we're in Motion 3 right now, and we have a project open that has a couple things going on. I'm going to turn off the layers that are using the blend mode so you can see the background video is this drip shot here. And if you turn the blend mode on, or I'm sorry, the layer that has the blend mode on, you're going to see that it masks away everything except for where the text is. So I made a text layer and then changed the blend mode for the text layer, and it's affecting the video layer that is underneath it. I'll go back a little bit, and here's another one of those effects where we are using a photograph blend mode to achieve this effect. If I turn that off, you see the video layer here. So if I go back to it, we're using a color dodge effect. So the basics of doing this is you have to have one layer on top of another layer, and the layer on top is going to affect the layer beneath it, depending on which blend mode you choose. So I'm going to close this, and try to build this from scratch. Save file new. So this was shot on the HVX at 724 PN, and we opened up a broadcast HD 720 project file, and I'm going to start bringing in some media. Getting your layers open, you can click and drag, or I believe it's F5. F6 will bring up the timeline, or you can click and drag to open up the timeline. So here you're going to see what your layers are doing in time, and here it's just kind of it's a layered view. So File Browser is where you can find everything in Motion. And the inspector, once we get things in here, you'll see the properties of the clips that you've dragged in. So I'm already in the folder that I have on my drive, and I'm going to grab the video and import it. Clicking my canvas window and Shift Z and zoom out. I haven't saved yet. It's probably a good idea. File save as. And I'm going to save this in there. Today is the 12th, I believe. This is tutorial. And so I have one layer right now. This is the video layer. So if I drag across, and by default, a new Motion project starts out with 10 seconds, and this is actually a 30-second long spot. So we'll go Edit, Project Properties, and we'll change the duration to 30 seconds. Okay, now we have 30 seconds. And if you're not seeing this view, you can click the little clock, and it'll change from frames to time code. Here we'll zoom out, grabbing a handle, and now I'm going to set my loop point back in time all the way at the end of this project. So here we can kind of see the full duration of the project. So the gist of it is we're going for an anti-bullying campaign where you see insults at the front end, or hear insults in a voiceover, and you have a close-up and then another close-up of this kind of slow motion teardrop, and then we turn the lights on, start hitting our actress with lights, and there's the end. So right here is where we're going to stylize, starting here with an image. So we'll start with, and this was taken with an iPhone. You'll see a preview of it here. Down arrows can jump through each of these. This is a floor, this is a brick wall. So I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to import this. And it's the layer above the video layer. So this is a still image, the layer underneath moves. And when I import something, it comes in wherever the time bar is. So if I need to change that, I'm going to have to adjust this in time on the timeline by dragging it. So I want to find the very first frame. Oops. Check this over so I can see. By using my left and right arrow keys, I'm jumping to the very first frame of this. And here's a quick key command. If you have something on a layer and you're on the timeline and you want to set the very first frame of something as an in point, hit the I key, and that makes it the in point. And then all the way at the end here, I can hit the O key, and that's the out point, and that will make it so it comes out at that time. But I want to be able to see this, so I'm going to trim this back and see where this happens. So I want to go to the very first. Very first frame of the drop in the background. There's my out point. Actually, there's one more back. So this will stay on the screen. And now let's change the properties so that it fills the whole screen, and we're going to change the blend mode. So I have to select the object, either clicking on it in the canvas or selecting the layer in the timeline or selecting the layer in the layers view. And then I'm going to click to the inspector tab. And now I see all the properties for this object. And here's the blend mode that we're going to change in a second. But first, the scale is very small. This is actually a pretty large image taken from the iPhone. File browser. It tells me that this is 2592 by 1936 pixels, and this is project properties 1280 by 720, so you could see that this is a much larger aspect ratio than this, and we can scale it up and not have any pixelation going on. So back to the inspector for this object, and I'm going to scale it up so it fills the screen. And now here's where the magic takes place. I changed this, and I believe color dodge was the one that kind of achieves this effect. So instantly we have this kind of cracked look on our model. The insults have really hurt, so we're emphasizing it here with a little style. So that's the first little effect that we had going on, and then the second thing that we had going on was a text layer that kind of masked out the background with a blend mode. So I'm going to click the text tool and click in and make text. So now that I have this going on, make sure you're in your inspector under format. You can click in here to change the text, or you can type directly on the screen. I think I had words hurt, something like that. Words enter hurt. And actually I think they were all caps. Let's try that. And now let's get into the styling of it. I like to use Helvetica font in the bold typeface, and here's where you're going to really stylize it. You can select text and change the size independently in the inspector, and I want to lay this out so that it is aligned center, so they kind of line up in the center there, and format. Here's where I'm going to get into the styling. So I want to make this totally fill the frame. I'm going to highlight words, and I'm going to crank it up. I'm going to have to move this, so using my arrow tool I can change its properties. And what I'm doing is changing the position property here by dragging it around. You can see these numbers change when you move. So undo. Select the text layer and move it so that it is center. And I'm going to go back to text and properties and highlight words and really up this font size. And I like to squeeze the letters together. That's under tracking. So I'm going to drag these back and make them almost touching, and then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to change this typing in. Let's go with 500. Might be a little bit too big. Let's go 450, 400, and let's go 380. That'll work. I do want it to fall off a little bit, and actually I think I'm going to squeeze these together even more and go up to 400. And now I'm going to highlight hurt and do the same thing. So we're going to crank this up, and let's go with 500. So hurt is going to be bigger than the top text, so it fills the frame. And if I change the baseline, I should be able to kind of squeeze these together. So go back and highlight words and change its baseline to kind of make them so they're almost touching. Words hurt, and then hurt again. I want to change the tracking, so I'm going to squeeze these together a little bit more, make them even bigger. Let's go with 600. Maybe it's a little too big. 550. Okay, so something like that, and then I'm going to move this up so it kind of fills the frame. Okay, so here now is how the blend modes kind of mask out what was going on with the layer underneath it. If you go into the properties for this layer, you can change its blend mode. You can also get to it by control clicking a layer. And here's blend mode here, and it gives you all the different blend modes. I'm going to suggest that you go through and play with them, because that's what I normally do until something really strikes me. Instead of explaining what each of these do, what we used in order to mask it is stencil, and alpha or luma will work. Alpha gives you the transparency. Luma gives you luminance from black to white. Since this is white text, it's going to work. And then alpha, since this is solid and doesn't have any opacity going on, this is going to work. So either of these will work, and I'm going to stencil. And now what you see is it's masked out everything that has 0 opacity is now black, and you can't see through it. And then everything that's 100 opacity, you see right through it and into the layer beneath it, which was this kind of teardrop hitting the table. And I want this to happen at the very first frame, so I'm going to use my arrow and jump to the first frame, and then I'm going to move my words layer over so that it's there, and then you'll see this drip. If I hit the space bar, kind of come in. I'm going to move this around until I see my drip a little bit better. So I think what I'll do is select the text, go back into hurt, and I might squeeze the tracking together so that it's even touching and I get a big chunk of space here. And then I think what I did was click and move this over so I really see what's going on. And I don't really mind that this is falling off the screen. It's kind of like a stylistic choice here. I think it's interesting that way. And then here the drip comes in, and then we go to the end here right when it goes to black, and everything's fading out here because the video has a fade in it. So that's all in the video track. So this is like an edited video piece already. And here, I mean, it just looks cool even with video, so you can see through. This is like a different type of shot. There's a bust shot rather than like a close-up. But here we'll just go to the black area, and I'm going to hit the O key to change the out point of what's on the timeline. And so here's a little bit of a style going on with our commercial. Hit the space bar, playing through. You can hear the audio track. We didn't delete the audio track. If I wanted to go to the audio editor, I can drag out the audio. But again, teardrop hits the table, and then here's where things start changing, and we start hearing positive messages in the voiceover track. And that's going to do it for this tutorial.